YouTuber Riley J. Dennis has just come out with another painfully embarrassing video. It's called Your Dating Preferences Are Discriminatory. The gist of it is that he's trying to persuade gays and lesbians not to be gay and lesbian because he wants to reconcile the antithetical relationship between gender identity and sexual orientation. It's not possible to do this without being homophobic. Of course, he's got to wrap that up in a bastardized form of intersectionality theory and present himself as a trans lesbian in order to trap the unwary into believing that they're supporting something progressive.
Would you date someone who's trans?
The liberals' way of disguising their homophobia is to conflate sexual preference with sexual orientation. A straight man is not interested in trans women because his sexual orientation is heterosexual, whereas a bisexual man who's not interested in trans women, this is his sexual preference, right? He's interested in other men sometimes, he's just not interested in trans women.
Would you date someone who's black? Would you date someone who's fat? Would you date someone who's disabled?
The reason why people will instinctively recognise someone who says, I don't do fatties, as being objectionable and rude is because it's not actually necessary to say that, even if it's true. Whereas the default is heterosexual. It's necessary for gay people and lesbian people to say, I'm not interested in people of a particular sex. To conflate sexual orientation and sexual preference is very manipulative and dishonest.
I'll link to a couple really good videos in the description about racial dating preferences.
You can link to whatever you like, Riley, but I see what you're doing. You're conflating sexual preferences with sexual orientation so that you can escape accusations of homophobia.
But in this video, I want to talk about our other biases.
And by other biases, you mean sexual orientation. Sexual orientation specifically refers to whether you're heterosexual, bisexual, or homosexual. In countries like the UK, it's a characteristic that is protected by anti-discrimination law. But there's still 65 countries where it's illegal to be gay or lesbian. In 10 of them, the death penalty applies to homosexuality. Riley J. Dennis goes to one of these countries where it's illegal to be gay with his cis girlfriend. He's not going to get arrested because they know what a homosexual is and it's not based on gender identity.
Would you date a trans person, honestly?
No, I would not date a trans person. I wouldn't date a male trans woman because they're male, and I wouldn't date a female trans man because they want to be a man. So the first example relates to sexual orientation and the second relates to sexual preference. And both of those are valid reasons to reject someone.
Well, if you said no, I'm sorry, but that's pretty discriminatory.
Well, I'm not sorry because I understand that dating is a discriminatory process. People are allowed to sexually reject anyone for any reason they want without being coercively guilt-tripped for it. It's kind of a basic concept of feminism.
Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you're a horrible person who hates trans people.
You kind of are, because when you say that sexual rejection is a form of discrimination, you're suggesting that one group can oppress another group by sexually rejecting them.
There was probably a time in my life when I said I wouldn't date a trans person, but since then I've thought critically about it and changed my mind.
It's all very well and good you saying that, because you know that these lesbian trans women aren't interested in you because they're heterosexual males.
There are definitely trans people who you would never know are trans unless they told you.
I'd never know you were trans unless you told me.
But I think arguing that you would only like a trans person if you didn't know they were trans is a poor argument.
It's not an argument I've ever made because I can't imagine a trans woman would ever trick me. To be honest, I just think trans women really act like men, but they also tend to go for this kind of pornified look with all the makeup and hair and shit. Even when women do that, I'm just not into that. But I do find it weird that you're sitting there arguing with people about who they should be interested in sexually. It kind of sounds like you're a bit of a bully, to be honest, Riley.
Because we associate penises with men and vaginas with women, some people think they could never date a trans man with a vagina or a trans woman with a penis.
Those people are called homosexuals and heterosexuals.
The people are more than their genitals.
What he's saying is really aggressive, by the way.
I think that you could feel attraction to someone without knowing what's between their legs. And if you were to say that you're only attracted to people with vaginas or people with penises.
Translation: if you were to say that you're a heterosexual man, a homosexual woman, or a heterosexual woman, homosexual man,
it really feels like you're reducing people just to their genitals.
When are people going to recognise that these fucking pricks are homophobic.
You're kind of objectifying them, but you're thinking of them more as genitals than objects.
I have lost count of the amount of times these trans activists have called me a vagina fetishist for being a lesbian.
So I guess you're kind of genitalifying them?
What will it take?
My point is, we have implicit biases that we were raised with or that we developed over time.
Homosexuality is not an implicit bias. Some women don't do dick. Get over it.
And they can be hard to get rid of.
Yeah, they're really hard to get rid of. That's why gay conversion therapy is so unsuccessful. Why do you want to get rid of it?
And I think this can be especially prominent within the queer community.
The queer community.
Gay men often pride themselves on being disgusted by vaginas.
As shown in my last response to Riley, he hates gays having pride in anything.
And the same goes for lesbian women with penises.
Leave lesbians alone, you creep.
It's difficult because some queer people have built their sexual identities on these repulsions.
The majority of the population seem to self-define as being heterosexual. Go bother them.
But I don't think they're innate at all.
Well, you have something in common with evangelical Christians. Leave lesbians alone.
If you met someone who was extremely attractive, had a great personality, but didn't have the genitals that you wanted, you might be surprised to find that it isn't a deal breaker.
Yeah, I'd be surprised, because it is a deal breaker.
As someone who is trans and gay,
So heterosexual male then.
people ask me with a very accusatory tone if I would date a girl with a penis.
If you harass lesbians demanding they include men into their dating pool, they will tend to respond with an accusatory tone.
Gay conversion therapy has been proven not to work.
What? So this is gay conversion therapy version 2.0 new and improved.
But you can unlearn your own prejudices.
Homosexuality is not a prejudice.
It just takes time and conscious effort.
I am so done with this shit.
And the way that we talk about potentially dating trans people has a lot in common with the way we discuss other preferences.
Why have you used air quotes there?
You really can't make any moral judgments on a person based on their weight.
Yet you feel like you can make moral judgments on people based on their being homosexual.
The more you work at unlearning your own prejudices, the more you'll be able to see people from these groups as people rather than tired stereotypes.
As shown by porn, finding people sexually attractive is definitely the route to seeing them as full human beings.
I think it's worth it.
It's worth it for you fetishist.
This video is a part of my Feminism with Riley series that I'm doing in collaboration with Everyday Feminism.
One of the reasons I think this video is a really useful one to respond to is that Riley J. Dennis is a very skillful tactician when it comes to presenting very regressive, homophobic, sexist ideas as being something progressive and inclusive and forward-thinking. It's quite interesting to cut through the bullshit and actually get to the crux of what he's saying.